morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Show. I am the Philly sports guy filling in for Mac, and from TGI Sports Talk, Keith Engle filling in for Jack. This was almost like this is a reboot of the Started Up from
Right.
a while ago. How are
Yeah.
you, Keith?
I'm doing great, Pegs. I think Mac asked me because I'm the closest guy in age to Mac, and I got no hair and I got glasses, so maybe people wouldn't even notice if you didn't say anything. I don't know, but it's great to
Well,
be with you this morning.
hey, yeah, absolutely. It's been a minute. Obviously we've life sort of taken us in a couple of different directions since the last time we spoke. My team has been doing amazing, and your team is not as much.
Up and
And
down.
the Phillies, the Phillies. I think I want to feel like that we stopped doing our show. Uh, what was it? A little after Girardi got fired?
No, it was after that. Rob Thompson already had the job, but it was before the season ended for sure. But yeah, Rob Thompson definitely had the job already.
Yeah, and then the Phillies went on this, I guess for lack of a better word, a magical run. That brought us to the World Series, and it's interesting. There was a pitcher that they picked up from Boston who was talking about how he took less money to come to Philadelphia because of what he watched or witnessed on
Mm-hmm.
TV from last year's run. And, being a part of that run, it was an amazing type of situation. Obviously, it was not something that was expected. And I think because of that, when you have a team that's not really expected to go somewhere and then they get somewhere, it brings an excitement level that you're not used to feeling. And that's really what was all around Philadelphia. I mean, it was an amazing type of situation where it was just electric. It was electric out there. And
When you
I,
don't expect it, I agree with you. When you don't expect it, it feels so much better. Look at being a Patriot fan, right? It came to be expected, but it wasn't always expected. And I remember 2001 was an amazing year. And
and that was beating the best show on turf.
yeah, I've never
Yeah.
expected it to happen. Never expected to get the playoffs. The team started badly. Belichick was close to getting fired, and
Yep.
things just clicked. So same kind of thing with the Phillies.
And I mean, it was in 2002. I think was that, or was it 2002? Was your first one?
Well, it would have been a 2002 calendar year. It was a 2001 season, right?
I mean, because the Eagles were also, they wound up going to the NFC East championship game against Rams, and really were pretty close to beating them there too.
Yeah.
Imagine had that last drive worked out a little differently. I mean, you could almost go back and say that Andy Reid's time management skills were not very well honed in at that point. And had they done things a little differently, that we could have, had the Eagles and Patriots Super Bowl trend.
Well, would have
You
been
know,
interesting. 3 times. Would have had a three-bagger in there by now.
yeah, and
Maybe we
they,
would
they
have
could.
won. You might have the history. It's so funny. The little twists, tiny little twists in history could change everything. Who knows what would have happened? Eagles
Well,
could have made it. The Patriots could have got beaten in the Super Bowl, and we wouldn't have had this run.
right, and Tom Brady would have been maybe questioned on
Yeah.
whether he was going to be as good as he is. You know what I mean? It's funny how things work out that way. It's
Yep.
just those little itty bitty differences between, winning and losing. Because you think about that in 2004, McNabb has always had the stigma that he hasn't been able to, get it done.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different now. You know what I mean? It's like obviously he's not as hated here as he was before, but
Does he get a
it's
lot of blame for that last drive in the Super Bowl? Because
as as
I
we
think
get
Reed.
as I get older, I start to relinquish blame on him and more on Indy
Yeah.
because of the way that things were going. It's as even Bill said in that game, he goes, he knows there's 2 minutes left, right? Like, what is he doing? It
Mhm.
confused him that he was moving so methodical and slow, and ultimately he's like, what's about to happen here? Like, it's like when you confuse a coach like Belichick, I guess that's a good thing. It didn't quite work out, you know what I mean? In the grand scheme
Yeah.
of things, but I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, think about that. I mean, had the scandal came out a little bit earlier about them videoing practices and things like that. I mean, who knows how much? I mean, I Yeah, I think of Teddy Bruschi. Every time I see Teddy Bruschi talking about, something, when it comes to and he's an Eagles hater. He really is an Eagles hater. He definitely is not a fan of Philadelphia whatsoever. Probably because he continually hears about the fact that they cheated, because he was the one that was really integral in calling out the plays that they thought that they knew. So there was a certain setup that came involved, and you guys win the game. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
over and done with. But
it is. And, by the way, the Boston papers had to retract their stories about them videotaping Rams practices during that Super Bowl week in 2002. So, but again, they did tread the line in a lot of cases. I still will tell you forever, they weren't doing things other teams weren't doing. They just did
yeah,
it.
there
They
was
just
there
did it
was
better and
a
got
lot
caught.
of stuff. There was a lot of stuff that was in. I mean, it's like you could film the practices, but they were filming the signals.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that they could have been filming the signals during the games. Like, you're not switching the signals up. I mean, think about that. What happened in, was it 2004, 2023, 2003? You had really Chucky bring in two teams to the Super Bowl that year. He brought Tampa Bay and he brought Oakland,
Yeah.
and they didn't change any of the terminology from the year before. So literally, both teams made it to the Super Bowl, and that's why that center went crazy,
Yeah.
because they had to change all the terminology, and he went nuts. He went nuts, and that's
Robbins, I think, right?
something like that. But
Yeah.
I remember it being like something absolutely ridiculous. Was like, oh my God, it's like he went crazy. Well, and then you understand why. Then you understand why. It was like it had nothing to do with that it was the game was too much for him. It was just that they had to change every stitch of terminology because they hadn't switched it up a little bit. You know, I got
Oh,
to imagine that certain coaches, that was one of the things that had to be learned by coaches on the fly, that
yeah.
you have to change up the terminology almost monthly. Where I kind of look at it, it's, for lack of a term, Washington is playing the Giants this week in a home and home type of situation for them. Now, the Giants obviously got beat by the Eagles last week, but now you've been on the field with only one team in 3 weeks. You were able to pick up certain things. You can watch the film, and now I know what it is. So, have they changed their terminology over the last 2 weeks to be able to do that on
You
either
would
side?
you would think you would. I mean, you see a lot of that in the NFL today, where teams play each other, twice in 3 weeks, especially division rivals. It would be anyway. But the Patriots had it with Buffalo. Was it? I'm trying to think. It was this year. Not well. They've got it again in a couple of weeks. Last year they played them 2 out of 3 weeks. And you've got to be able to change up. I'm sure somebody as smart as Bill Belichick isn't going out there with the same signals week after week, because he knows, if I can do this, other people can do it to me. And I think they're
That's
probably on top of that type of thing.
I would have to think so. However, I mean, this is, you never know. I mean, being a coach in the NFL is difficult in general, You know what I mean? To get it down to that type of level. I mean, we're talking about bringing it down to such a minute level of, hey, you know, the scat back or whatever it is, the scat formation is going to have a different meaning from
Yeah.
week to week. That's how to the players, how are they able to really remember all of that? It is much more difficult than just going out there and playing ragtag football.
Well, I think the Patriots actually ought to use the same terminology when they play well to the next week because they've been very up and down this year. They play one really good game, and you think they've turned the corner, and then they go in the tank, and their
Do you
season's on
think
the
they
brink.
make the playoffs?
As we sit here today, I will still tell you yes, but it's going to be hard because they got to win again this week on the road at Vegas. That'll get them to 8. I say 9 wins. I've been saying forever 9 wins will get that last playoff spot. So it's the Jets, the Chargers, and the Patriots, and the Dolphins are kind of bringing themselves into the picture a little bit, but I still think they're okay. But the Patriots have this game with Vegas. Then they're at home against the Bengals. They're at Buffalo and Miami at home. I got to win. I got to win this week, and I got to win one of those games to get to 9. I got to win one of the Bengals, Bills, or Dolphins. Dolphins at home might be the best shot. Bengals are playing good football now. And that might take 10 because the Chargers are getting healthy and playing really good football, and their schedule's a bit easier. I could see them getting to 10, actually. So, and
that's what I was thinking, that 10 is going to be what really does it, and that you have to, especially since you have the Jets in the mix. I mean, who would have thought that the Jets really were a worthwhile team this year? But it just shows that it's amazing the difference a coach makes. And when things start to actually put together, it's like you think of Gase and all the things that went wrong with Gase, and then now all of a sudden things started clicking. It's not much different than the team was last year.
Yeah.
Minus a few different draft picks. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a surprise. There again, the Patriots are in that same boat as well. That's they made the playoffs last year, which was really the surprise. This year, it's maybe not so much of a surprise. The surprise is how well the East is doing in general, as in total.
It's been very
really
good.
the surprise.
It's been very good. Patriots too. I mean, everybody has injuries. I don't use injuries as an excuse. It's just a fact. I mean, it's not just injuries, I should say. Their receiving core, while there's some good players that you'd want on your team as as second, well, maybe third and fourth and fifth receivers, they don't have a real number one. And that's killing them. They thought Parker was going to be that guy, but he shows up one week, doesn't show up the next. Myers is hurt now. He's their most reliable guy to move the chains. He's out. I hope he's back this week. But I was happy
Nelson Aguilar is not stepped up enough.
I'm sure you've seen to know exactly the pain I'm going through watching him play football. Jesus, good God.
He does have good moments, but
the eternal picture I'll have in my head of him, Pags, against the Vikings on Thanksgiving night. The Patriots played a good football game in Minnesota. They should have won the game. And late in the game, they still had a chance to go ahead. Mac Jones threw an absolutely perfect long ball right at the pylon. And Nelson Aguilar had a step on his guy and just turned. He was spinning in circles. He had no idea where he's supposed to go for the ball. Mac Jones threw it right where he's supposed to, and Aguilar either lost where he was on the field or just didn't know where to go to begin with. And to me, that's that's the picture I'll have in my head of him forever. They should have won that game.
I understand.
Then he'll make a couple plays that make you go, man, maybe he's starting to get it. He made a couple good plays Monday night. And then he drops a ball that's right in his hands for an easy first down. He's just so frustrating.
Hey, I get it. And you have my other guy up there, Mills, who unfortunately the defense has not been so great for Belichick this year. But I mean, I'm a big fan of the Green Goblin. It's I did not like to see him leave here in Philadelphia. I know he was not well liked and well received here, and in comparison to where our our core is now, I'm okay with it. Obviously we had upgrades in all of those spots. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
He's played pretty well. He's been out the last couple of weeks, but he's played pretty well. They mix that defensive backfield a lot. He brings a lot of bodies in and out of there. But between him and the gaggle of Joneses we have, I can't even keep all the Joneses straight. There's so many of them. But they played much better than I thought they would play this year.
Well, so. and I would be willing to bet that has to do a lot with him. He brings a good leadership to a defense that was they didn't really talk about it very much in Philadelphia. However, I remember a couple of years ago when he was hurt and then he came back, and the moment he came back, the defense got better, and the media put it for a lot of different reasons. And didn't really look at it for him because he's a 6th round pick. He's still made mistakes. He gets beat on double moves. He's not a cover corner. He's more of a safety because he's got the closing speed and able to defend passes that he wasn't supposed to defend in the first place.
Yeah.
But that's part of the reason. But once he got back on the field, the whole defense got a lot better. And they said, oh, well, it's because of this reason and this reason and this reason, and it wasn't anything to do with him. And I didn't think that was correct. So it's like I said, I enjoy him as a player. Let's switch it up a quick bit. We talked about football, obviously, and it's, who do you guys have this week? The Jets?
We have the Raiders on Sunday night.
The Raiders. And that's in Las Vegas.
They got flexed out on Sunday night. They're playing at 4:00 in Vegas. In Vegas.
Yeah. Got you. That should be a win for you guys.
It should be. I mean, the Raiders have found all kinds of ways to lose games, so I hope they don't figure out a way this week. I mean, that team is like, I don't know if it's a reflection on Josh McDaniel or not, but how many double-digit leads have they lost this year? 5?
Something like it's been ridiculous. And I look at it more on, goes more on the franchise itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you have to look at the very, very top. Is it Mark Davis? Is that his name? Mark Davis is not Al Davis.
No,
yeah.
Mark.
I mean, that's the problem. He's not his father, and he wants to be his father.
Well, first he needs. I mean, Al had a kind of cool hair look going on, and I'm not one to bust guys on their hair. If you take a look at my head, but Mark Davis got to do something with that head, man. Jeez.
I almost just spit out what I was drinking.
Gosh, I mean, Mark, you got a mirror, dude. I mean, you can't be going for that look. It's got to be a mistake.
So let's talk about something that I know that you probably have a really good opinion on. Korea just signed a 13-year deal, and and $300 and whatever million and blah blah blah. He's 28 years old. He's going to play till now he's 40, or at least he's going to get paid till he's 40. Have these contracts gone ridiculous?
It's funny, and I'll sound like I'm being hypocritical here, but in some cases, yes, in some cases, no. I understand, and it's not because I'm a Yankee fan. It's because of what the man means to the franchise and a lot of other things. There's a lot of intangibles and different things that go into getting Aaron Judge signed, right, for 9 years, $360 million. I would have given him 10 for 400 if I had to match what the Padres did. That's different to me because you're bringing your own guy back who's the face of the franchise and means more than just what he brings to the field. Then Carlos Correa being a mercenary and going out and selling his wares to the highest bidder, it's a different story with him. It's even DeGrom. I know it's only 5 years, but he was over. The Rangers are really reaching, right? Signing him just for 5 years. You had this situation, and it's funny. I should be able to apply this to the Phillies signing Turner for 11 years, right? I don't know. And we'll talk about what your thoughts are there, I'm sure. I mean, he's a great fit for that team, I think. I think he's a wonderful signing for that team. He's going to do wonders. Whether he plays second or shortstop, he's going to help your defense, and he's a spark plug. But it's a lot of years and a lot of money, and teams have to know at the end of those contracts, you're not getting the money, worth the money you're paying him, but they all know that. So
So what do you think's going to happen? Because you have all of these ridiculous contracts, and I'm calling them ridiculous. They're actually not ridiculous. I don't ever begrudge anybody making the money. So
never
God
begrudge the
bless.
player.
Right.
Never
This is.
begrudge the player.
But do you foresee baseball having a problem here in the next 6 years? That these contracts. I mean, think about. I think about these, and and out of all the teams, I think the Phillies are the ones doing it kind of right because you get so in 9 years from now, you're going to have $52 million or $55 million locked up in those two players,
Mm-hmm.
which is not so bad in comparison to the fact that hey, in 9 years from now, you're going to have $40 million, locked up on Judge alone. So 52 to 40. I mean, I think that I'm probably winning that battle a little bit, and the Phillies have been winning these battles a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it had. I think that had a little bit to do with the fans. Again, this playoff run was so magical, for lack of a better word to call it. I mean, I feel like that the fans won a number of games for the Phillies in the playoffs.
I would agree with that. Yes. The energy they fed off of, I think it was tremendous. Yes.
I think I specifically, I feel like specifically Game 5 of the NLCS, where Harper going up to the plate, and that I think that was a specific, win. I feel that Game 3 of the World Series, where we crushed them 7-0.
Yeah.
And even in hindsight, watching, thinking, being there at Game 3 and then going again to Game 4, the energy level not being anywhere near what it was for Game 3, it was much more of a corporate feel that you know you needed the same type of energy level to get to the pitchers. I think that it unnerved the pitchers. It definitely unnerved Atlanta,
Yeah.
in that Atlanta series. San Diego was not ready for it. And I remember right before that home run, because like I said, I'm, as I told you before we got on the air, I'm putting together the top 10 moments of Philadelphia sports this year. And I think about, and it's my top 10 sporting moments that I was there for, not, there may have been moments that happened away that I'm not including. I had to be there for the game.
Fair
And
enough.
and I remember the video that people sent me was they showed me literally right before he hit that home run, and just the electricity level that was in the air, just in that stadium before that pitch. You know, First off, if I was San Diego, why didn't you go to your closer earlier? You
Yeah.
really needed to get him out there first and foremost, so that you blew that in such a way. And then because I look at it in the opposite way too, where Rob Thompson, when he pulled out Wheeler in Game 6 early, it's like, if you're going to pull him early, you got to go to Ranger. You can in, uh, you know, you cannot go the way you did against, especially since he had seen him 4 times. You almost could foresee it. You know, I mean, I saw flashbacks of Fergosi putting in Mitch Williams.
Oh, that's
Yeah, but he did it under the same guise
yeah.
that this is how we do it, and
Yeah.
this is how it's going to have to work. And he didn't, and you could call it a rookie mistake from a coach who's been around forever. I can imagine that he has learned from that. That if given the same situation, he won't go the same exact way.
I think you're right. Rob Thompson's a smart guy. I think he's learned. To your point about the fans helping, I agree. Being a Yankee fan, and the energy in the field and the corporate feel, it's changed from the old Yankee Stadium to the new Yankee Stadium. You don't feel the same energy in that ballpark. Whether you're watching on TV or sitting in the stands, you don't feel it. The noise level just isn't there because you know, around the field level, it's all these $3,000 seats where the corporate people are sending people who are just there, they're waving their friends on a TV and they're on their cell phones. They aren't even
Well,
watching the game.
I think of going the other way. It's like I think of the other team that's out there. Uh, the Mets in New York. Yeah, you have Seinfeld that has a club box like right there, or like a diamond club box, and he never shows up for.
Yeah,
That's an empty box and then
it's good for the team.
then they have to manufacture the energy sometimes with that whole with the guy with the trumpet, which I kind of enjoyed. I like when that type of stuff happens because I understand how that can energize a crowd some. But of course, there were a lot of Mets fans that were like, that is so ridiculous. I don't know why they did it, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, really? Like, really? That's how you feel about it? But
Now with the money, and it carries over right into like the Super Bowl, right? I mean, there should be more real fans. They should make more tickets available to, let's say the Eagles are there and whoever, the Patriots, just because this is probably the only time I get to say that. The Eagles are playing the Patriots. There should be more tickets available just to real fans from those two teams. The NFL makes enough money off the Super Bowl and every other game that they don't need to have, people spending $40,000 for a ticket. They don't need that. That money's chump change to them. They could let real fans go to these games and have some real energy in that ballpark for that Super Bowl, and it would be a lot more fun I think, for me.
I agree. I agree. And I feel like, again, going back to Super Bowl 52, I mean, there were more Eagles fans. That was definitely an Eagles crowd because Eagles fans do travel pretty well, and I, I'd love to say that money is no object here because I tell you, when we make it to the Super Bowl this year, and I say when because I don't think that there's an if. This is a when. I feel that the Eagles do not lose any game that they remain focused for, and they are laser focused with everything. Now, does that mean that could change? I feel like that there's only an injury that could happen, minus a multitude of injuries. If Jalen Hurts gets hurt or AJ Brown gets hurt, that's a whole different scenario. Then you'd have to worry. But as
Yeah,
long as those two stay healthy and they stay focused, there's no way that the Eagles lose the Super Bowl.
I think
And that
you're right because a combination of things. I think they're that good, and the rest of that league, the NFC is really weak this year. The Eagles can. I think you're right. The only team that can beat the Eagles right now is the Eagles.
right, that is one correct, and I felt that way all year long. It's like people have asked me, do I think they were going to go undefeated? No, I didn't think they go undefeated. Going back onto that Washington game was a letdown because we had a World Series hangover.
Yeah,
And I think about the energy level. Like, had the energy level been just as high as it was in the previous weeks before that, we probably win that game for a lot of other reasons. I mean, you think of you think of some of the basic stuff of how even referees start to change the way that they call a game because of the crowd level. There's just these guys are human beings, so
yeah.
there's thought processes that occur that had it been a little bit different, it might have acted different. And that the crowd was flat. It was just a flat crowd, and that's okay. You know what I mean? We were allowed to be. You know what I mean? It was a long month and a half.
Players have off. Players have days where they're just not. They're flat. They're not that up, and I'm sure fans are allowed to have the same kind of days. I mean, it happens.
So,
And sometimes the teams are responsible for some of that too. You come out a little bit, don't really get it going early, then the fans never get into the game, and that's that.
but going back to what we were originally kind of talking about, I foresee baseball having a serious problem here in the next 7 years. Like, I think that you're going to have a very old group of guys that are making a lot of money that would be deserving of that money at that time.
Yeah,
And it is it going to take that long for the owners to start to realize that they cannot do these long-term contracts? This isn't hockey. And and I say it like that because players remain good for a while, but like Pujols is a perfect example. He was not worth the money that he was getting in the last 5 years. Now, maybe the last 5 minutes of that contract, the last, when he started to go crazy because everybody was pitching to him and
Yep.
everybody was, into that, stratosphere of the 700 home runs, and he had a great, career and stuff like that. But you talk about, you know, take away that last 5 minutes and you go for like the previous 5 years, and he was a shell of himself, and he got paid a tremendous amount of money. No begrudge to him, but, and you would have thought that maybe they understood, that owners understood. Is it, is it because that everything's inflated now? What do you think would take for everything to come back down? Is it going to be the $50 million contract for 5 years that's going to take it? Are we going to start seeing ridiculous amounts of money for very short periods of time? And that's what's going to really start to do things?
You know what it's going to take? And I think right now these things are happening in part because baseball teams are kind of flush because TV money's gone up with Apple getting involved, with Peacock getting involved. It's pissing fans off, number one. They don't know where to find their games on a given night. You got TBS involved where they weren't before. They have been for a few years, but you get people like Amazon and Peacock. The numbers are going to go way up. They're not football numbers as far as TV revenue, but the owners are a little flush right now. And I think that's part of why you're seeing this spending spree. Well, what I see, and that may last for a few years, but as fans get more and more angry and stop showing up and stop watching the TV because they can't find their game, their team, that's what's going to happen. And they're going to get hit in the pocketbook, and they're going to have paying out some bad contracts. And you may see teams, again, we got to this point kind of back in, I want to say the early 2000s, right, where we almost had teams contracted because they couldn't afford to keep up with the big boys or even pay minimal salaries because they had put themselves in bad positions in Montreal and Tampa Bay, and Minnesota almost got contracted. Teams had been around a long time even. You may see that type of thing if they continue to spend like drunken sailors just because they're flush right now and don't plan for the future. It's not much different than real life, right? I mean,
Right.
Just because you got $1,000 in your pocket right now doesn't mean you should spend it all. Put 500 in the bank, go below 500. And the teams like the Yankees, and here's the other problem: the teams like the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, maybe the Phillies to a certain extent, the Red Sox. You've got a couple of teams that can just, it doesn't matter. I hear people say all the time, "Oh, how are they going to put a team around Aaron Judge?" Well, they're the Yankees. It doesn't matter. They can go over to luxury tax and pay it. Well, the Royals can't. This is where the Rangers are going to kill themselves if they. How are they going to put a competitive team around 4 decent offensive players and 1 good pitcher? They're not. Not with what they're paying 4 guys $120 million next year.
And then you opposite side of the spectrum, like Tampa Bay, and in some cases Oakland. Oakland goes through that phase where it's like every 4th or 5th year they start to do that. And even like the Marlins. The Marlins are a good hotbed of talent that used to talent, and then they wind up getting paid somewhere else. So
yeah, but they don't find a way to win ever. Once every 2 decades, they find a way to win. But you got to win some games too eventually, not just develop other players. The Astros are a good example. I mean, their payroll's not low like Tampa Bay, but they don't go crazy, right? They let Garrett Cole walk away. They let Justin Verlander walk away. They're not going to pay those exuberant salaries, and they build their farm system to kind of be able to replenish those guys and make some smarter free agent moves that aren't quite as crazy. Although I was surprised they brought Abreu in this year. That was kind of outside of their normal model. But I think they're a good franchise to keep an eye on too. And more teams ought to do that, rather than just spending their money because they got it. I mean, I keep going back to the Rangers, and I don't understand this at all. We can talk about those 13-year contracts, but even a contract to a 34-year-old pitcher who can, can't lift his arm some days, $188 million guaranteed. when you don't have a team ready to win, you're telling me Jacob deGrom, I don't care if he starts 30 games and wins 30 games, they're not going to make up the difference between them and the Astros.
Right. No.
It makes no
And
sense.
not the way Seattle's playing. I mean, Seattle is
And
again
Seattle's
another
better.
team that's so it's like I look at Seattle as being on the come up, and that you know the Astros. I know the Astros have made it to the World Series 4 of 6 times, and that they had a dynasty of sorts that started with the cheating scandal, but have gotten beyond that. I mean, if there was anything that kind of made me you know happy for Houston fans, because the Houston fan hasn't cheated.
Nope.
You know what I mean? It was the team itself that cheated. So when I look at the fan base, it's like, okay, this is kind of what it is and how that goes about and such. But I was happy for them. However, I think that they have a huge hangover. This year. I don't think that they are going to be anywhere near as good as they were this past year.
It's possible, but they haven't. It hasn't happened to them yet. Even after the cheating scandal, you'd think that would have set them back a little bit. It really didn't. I mean, they still were very competitive, and they were World Series champions or contenders every single year.
Well, I think that the cheating puts a chip on your shoulder. Now you've got that chip that you're trying to get over, and so that they lose, and then they lose, and then they lose, and then you win. So, I mean, ultimately, I think that you to really fight for what it
Yeah,
is you're
maybe
going after.
you may be right. That's a good point. And that whole thing just ticked me off anyway. Listen, as a team that was theoretically and cries about it right and left, Brian Crashman still thinks they'd have won the World Series if the Astros didn't cheat. And I keep saying you didn't score any runs. So how does sign stealing help you if you don't score any runs anyway? That
Right.
doesn't help you. So please stop. And again, it's teams. They took it to another level. Major League Baseball team's been stealing signs since the game started.
Right. And now,
Overblown controversy that again.
and
Good for
even after stealing the sign, you still got to hit the ball.
yeah, exactly.
However, then I go back to was it three, I guess, that he was tipping his pitches.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there is a lot more to be said about that. You know what I mean? That it's if Harper's like, hey, you see what's going on. If he comes down a little bit lower, and if he's a little bit more open up, just straight out tipping, and next thing you know, boom, hits that home run.
No,
So
I really think. I mean, again, the electronics involved. It's like we talked about with the football, right? Things evolve. Teams been stealing signs in baseball forever. Billy Martin and the Yankees had Gene Michael out there with binoculars in center field, trying to steal the signs and relaying them to the dugout. You can go all the way back to 1950. What was it? The Giants and Dodgers playoff, 51 or 54. I don't remember now. 51, I think. The great 2-3 game, the Bobby Thompson home run. Ralph Branca went to his grave saying the Giants were stealing their signs, and that's why Thompson hit the home run. Well, yes, it's easier if you know what's coming, but Thompson still had to put the bat on the ball and hit a home run.
right,
So
exactly.
please stop. These aren't new things. People, teams take it to new levels now, but it's not like they created sign stealing. Oh my God, they're stealing signs. Brian
Well,
Cashman.
and not only that, I think about something that came across the wire. I heard on Sports Talk Radio. There were, what was it, 42 or maybe 52 pitches that were at 102 miles an hour
Wow.
that were right down the middle. And out of those 52 pitches that were right down the middle, one of them was called a ball. You know what I mean? So they called it a ball. So that guy didn't swing at that one. But nobody got a hit. That's 102 miles an hour, right down the middle of the plate. Nobody. Some people fouled it off, but there was not one hit. So again, doesn't matter, knew exactly what was coming. You still got to get around on it, and you still got to be able to put it in play.
Right.
And if you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it. So
Again, you're right. The Astros, that chip means something. Look what a chip on his shoulder did for Tom Brady for the last 22 years. So, chip on your shoulders is a good way to go.
And a made up chip. That was a straight made up chip. Oh,
Oh,
they
he would
didn't
make
choose
shit
me
up
until
all the
the
time.
end of the sixth, to the sixth round and blah blah blah. I can't wait. I can't wait to see them in the playoffs against the Cowboys. Which is going to be that's going to be the wild card. That's going to be the wild card. And you know, if I mean Dak Prescott hasn't beaten Tom Brady, correct?
He is not.
So, and that's going to be theirs. That's going to be what starts because I think that they're going to make it with a 7-10 record.
I was just going to say it's going to be a 7-10 Bucks team. It's it's funny, Pags. Before the season of my NFL little preview show, and this could still happen. I picked the Panthers to win the division, and the Bucks not to make the playoffs. Now, I picked the Panthers because I thought Matt Rule was going to really step up in his fourth year. I thought Baker Mayfield was a good signing, throwing the ball to Robbie Thompson and having McCaffrey healthy maybe for the entire year. Well, they could win this division with 7 wins, which I didn't predict, and none of those 4 guys would have anything to do with it. That division is just a joke right now.
It is. It is. Although it reminds me of the NFC East a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It's where the Giants could have won it with a 6-10 record.
Yeah, there's always one of these divisions, it seems, somewhere in the league.
Well, and it has a lot to do with the way that obviously they're playing against the AFC East, right? That's why part of that's happening. That's why the AFC East is doing pretty well because when you win most of the games, and same thing with the NFC East going up against the AFC South.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That we have won the share of those games, so we have all winning records, and get past the Titans who have been beating up their own division. At least they were. Now they're not because they've been exposed. It's been interesting to kind of be like, this is, but although I said that it wasn't going to be the AFC West, you heard me talk about it. I said that they were overrated, and they were. And I thought the same thing with the NFC West. I thought that they were overrated. Just that the Rams, I didn't think were going to do well. I thought that the 49ers were going to win the division. But I thought that, Seattle is a little bit of a surprise, but I think they're going to be back down to earth.
Can Brock Purdy keep this team afloat and give them a real chance to at least get to the NFC Championship game?
I think so. I think so. I think that they have a good enough team around him. Now, the guy getting hurt, or what's his face, was that's a big loss because Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
That's a big loss for them. So that's going to make it a lot harder. It's going to rely more on Purdy. And he's just got the weirdo name that says that you're a quarterback. You know what I mean?
He's the best quarterback story since Kurt Warner in my mind, right? Kurt Warner came from the packing groceries, as we all know, to winning a Super Bowl. And Brock Purdy is Mr. Irrelevant in last year's draft, player taken, and all of a sudden he's thrust into the national spotlight. It's a cool story to follow, and
I agree.
Root for the 49ers.
And think about how they could had picked in so many other ways, and they wouldn't have had this. Like they could have brought in the guy that the Eagles brought in that they wound up cutting. You know what I mean? That it was very well touted as that guy. So I mean, they chose him, and sometimes I think they chose him for the name. I think that the name has something to do with it. You have a weirdo name, like this very unique name. That's that actually helps you become a better quarterback some way. It's so ridiculous. But that being said, I think that the NFC is so soft. I think the NFL is soft this year.
Yeah,
it really is soft.
There's a lot of bad teams for sure.
I was talking yesterday, and I said that I think that it's possible that it could be the Chiefs and the Eagles in the Super Bowl. But it wouldn't surprise me. I don't even consider Buffalo in the mix. It's like I don't trust Buffalo.
I think people got. It's funny that they've won 4 in a row. They got home field advantage right now, and I still think they're good enough if they get home field advantage to beat Kansas City. I think that comes down to who plays at home in that game. I do believe it'll be them in both of those teams in the championship again. Josh
I
Allen's that good.
see, and I think it's going to be Cincinnati. I think that
Now,
it's going to wind up. What's going to wind up happening is that the way that the seeding would go. I mean, I guess the Chiefs would be number 2 or number 1,
it'd
and
be 1 or 2, right?
right. So that it would be Cincinnati that would wind up playing Buffalo, or Cincinnati would, if Chiefs win it, or it's because it's Cincinnati and the Chiefs, or Cincinnati and Buffalo, because they're not going to be the 4th seed, because that's going to be the Titans or what have you. And I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati is the one that's able to pull it off, because and it's Joe Burrows. He's got that. He's got the Joe Burrows effect, that you just can't bet against him.
Another team in the AFC not to count out because they're getting healthy right now at the right time is the Chargers. They've stayed afloat somehow without Keenan Allen until the last couple of weeks all year long. They missed Mike Williams for nearly a month before this past week. They've somehow managed to stay afloat, and now they're all getting healthy. And if they get healthy, it's possible they get hot in the playoffs, and you have to watch out for them. Going to have to play on the road most of the time, but that's the big downside for them.
And what is it? I think that their last week of the season is also on the road, so that would be 4 weeks on the road in a row. And I think that's what makes it really tough. You have to really be on it, and it's especially because sometimes you're playing on Saturday, sometimes you're playing on Sunday. Is it how's that all going to work if you're on a Sunday, the Saturday, in that second week, where all right, you just ended the season, you're playing on the Sunday, the following week you're playing on the Saturday, and it's now you've played 3 away games in 13 days, and weigh on you a little bit.
And the times of the games are all screwy too. It's not just the Saturday and Sunday. Even the Sunday games, I don't think they play any 1:00 games anymore. I think all of them.
No, it's 3:30, 3:30, and 6:30 because they do
even
the 2.5-hour
game.
game show.
Yeah.
So, and that's it's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously, I'd love to. I think that next to overtime hockey in the playoffs, that the football playoffs really are the best to watch. I think they're the most drama filled and things like that. There's just a lot of intrigue.
The first two weekends are awesome, right? You got wall to wall, games from Saturday and Sunday both. It's a lot of fun. Love it.
So, hey, listen, I hopefully I don't have to worry about week 1 of the playoffs. That we get that number 1 seed, which I kind of believe that. I mean,
you got a 3-game lead, basically, don't you? I mean,
so it would have to be. We would have to almost, if we beat Chicago, at that point we'd have to lose out. Dallas would have to win out, and there would need to be something else that occurs on the backside so that they would get to either. It's not a strength of schedule, but I think it's like a common opponents type of situation that would fall into the mix.
4 games left. They basically, because they got a 2-game lead in the standings on both the Cowboys and the Vikings, but they beat both those teams, correct? They hold the tiebreaker over both. So that's a 3-game lead. So it's going to be very hard. They've got to implode.
Well, so the Vikings can't do it. The Vikings are unable to get the number 1 seed because they've also lost to Dallas. So even if the Eagles were to lose the next 4 games, like I said, and I expect that we beat Chicago handily this week. So I think Chicago actually threw in the towel last week. So that being said, I think when that Dallas would have to win out, obviously, and then we would have to lose the next 3, and Dallas would wind up with the number 1 seed because you go from number 1 to number 5.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that if you've had that type of swoon, then I'm really nervous playing Tom Brady.
If you beat the Bears and if you beat the Cowboys the following week, it's over.
Once you beat the Cowboys, it's over. Right, correct. Yeah. That's the guarantee. Then you have to worry about how do you play the following 2 weeks.
Agreed.
Because you got to play the following 2 weeks, and then you have a bye week. So do you go after the Bears record, of the one loss?
You know, I don't know if I say yes. I say keep playing your guys. The Patriots and all the years that they were, winning divisions year after year, they didn't sit guys ever,
Right.
ever. Tom
When you sit guys, when you're up by a lot.
Yeah.
That's when you sit guys.
And it's not just a record either, Pegs. I mean, when you think about it, you said you got to buy. You can't really just kind of sit guys around for 3 weeks. In that fourth week, you'd want a team to come out flat. That's a great way to do it right there. I say play them. And
correct.
I say play them. And, like you said, you get up by 25 in the fourth quarter, get them out of the game. But otherwise.
They have been doing that. I mean, we've seen, Mac's favorite, Gardner Minshew, the last 2 weeks. He's been out there quarterback in the fourth quarter because we've been that hot and we have been that high in the.
I've heard a lot about Gardner Minshew this week. His coach in college was Mike Leach, by the way, at Washington State. Passed away here a couple of days ago. Yeah, so Gardner Minshew's been mentioned in a lot of articles this week. So.
But yeah, that's a shame about him. Just
very sad. And I know you don't follow college as closely as you do the rest of the pro sports, but Mike Leach was a character, quirky, smart, funny, and the world of college football is just going to be worse for not having him around. He's just an
the world lost a little color. The college football lost a little color. So
he's an interesting guy.
And it's I'm a big fan of that type of coach. I mean, these are kids still. You have to have can't all be like Saban and just just a miserable bastard the entire time. You got these kids are still kids. You know what I mean? I know that you are prepping them to try to play in the NFL and that all these things are going on, but it's still college. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be some of the best times of their life. It's not supposed to be miserable. So I prefer having a coach who can understand that some.
The players talked about they go to team meetings and they would get on each other, say, don't bring up anything but football because there's supposed to be an hour meeting. And if you brought up something with Coach Leach, he might go on for an hour and a half or 2 hours about something going on in Europe or the price of coffee in Brazil. Or he was just very quirky guy. And then their meetings would last 3 hours instead of an hour. So they'd get mad at each other for bringing up topics outside of football.
Like, why'd you talk about stuff like that? And,
anyway.
the only, I know we'll touch on this a little bit. I know that you talk more about, obviously they moved up everything to 2024 with the playoffs. So next year will be the last year of the 4-team playoff, and then they're going to go with 12. I'm gonna already call it right now that Penn State will be the 13th seed in that.
Good call. As long as James Franklin there, they'll be 13 for years. Yes.
Right. Yes. They will just miss the playoffs over and over and over again. It's just the kind of way that I kind of foresee it.
When you lose Ohio State and Michigan every year, then you're going to be 13 probably all the time. Yes.
Right. It's I'll be honest. I think Ohio State is on the decline. I think that there's been a little bit of a passing of the torch between Michigan and Ohio State for right now. Until, of course,
I think Ryan Day will be in the NFL, if not this year, then next year, maybe with the Browns. Your coach. Yeah.
Oh, got you. Let's see. And it's so, well, I think the Browns are still a dumpster fire of a franchise. I think that the way that they've done things is not really made anything better. It is what it is. But
no, the franchise is running to the ground for sure.
But for sure. So who are the 4 teams in the
this year? You got Georgia 1, you got Michigan 2, TCU 3, and Ohio State 4.
So Ohio State wind up making it because of the big meltdown on 2 Saturdays ago. But TCU stayed in.
Yeah, TCU stayed in. They, I'm not surprised they stayed in. USC was 4th at the time, which. Here's my problem with Ohio State getting in, and this is the problem with 4 teams, right? You got to have a 4th team. Nobody really deserved it. So Ohio State, who didn't even make their league championship game, got blown up by Michigan in their last game. Ohio State was 4, had come off a big win in their last game against Notre Dame, a ranked team. They get penalized for playing an extra game, their league championship game, and they don't play well. They get blown out, but so did Ohio State in their last game. Ohio State's penalized, dropped all the way to 10. And Ohio State moves back up into the 5th spot. And you knew that was what they were setting it up for when they only dropped them to 5 after they got blown out by Michigan.
Well, I think they were trying to figure out a way to get Alabama in there. How can we make Ohio State lose and have Alabama in there, because Alabama is the better team to have in there.
That's why that second to last ranking was important. Where Alabama and Ohio State stood, you knew who was going to move up if somebody faltered. And but it was very hard to take a 2-loss team that didn't even make their conference championship in. Now, in the new system, they'd be in for sure.
Right, everybody be in. So,
in fact, it'd be very interesting in the new system. Clemson, who didn't make it, would have a bye the first week. Utah, who didn't make it, would have a bye the first week based on their conference, winning their conference championships and where they are ranked. They would have byes because there's 4 byes in the first round of the 12-team playoff. So,
and that's conference champions.
That's correct.
Get the bye.
That's correct.
So it doesn't matter where you're ranked. It's a conference championship.
You have to win your conference championship. Correct.
Got you. All right. So that makes sense. But think about what would have happened if LSU or Purdue won those final games. LSU was the one that everybody was talking about mostly. Was like, hey, LSU wins this game. What's it going to mean for Georgia? And is LSU? How do you not have the SEC champion in the Final Four? And
well, they made it easy when they lost the game before that, the playoff, to have 3 losses. There was no debate. If they somehow won the SEC championship with 3 losses, they weren't getting in. Georgia was going to be in either way. But again, it shows some of the flaws of what you have here. They don't put, with the 4 teams, they didn't put enough weight on conference championships. They just didn't, right? It should mean something. The Pac-12, people like to run the Pac-12 down. USC made their conference championship game. They only lost to 1 team all year. So did Ohio State. They just happened to lose to that team twice. But the Pac-12 had like 6 teams in the top 18 teams in the country. That's not terrible. And right. They like to run down USC because of that. But look, they've had a great year. And this is why you needed to expand this playoff. I'd still like to see them get to 16. I'm not crazy about the byes. I'd like to see them go to 16, but that might happen down the road here.
They could be good for college. The truth of the matter is that I would prefer that they go to 6 just next year. Let's do the 6. So you have the first 2 teams have the bye, and then the bottom 4 play that out and to get up into there. But now you have college players, team games in the season. And I think that's part of some of this as well. But this is part of what the NIL, I think, should really resolve too, because now you have the NIL that's, paying these guys money. So, yeah, you have to earn your money now. Just my opinion.
Point.
So,
no, it's a good point. And with the new playoff, they'll play possibly 3 extra games, right? But they're probably going to drop 1 out of conference game during the season. So they won't play 12 regular season games. They'll probably play 11. So I think the most games they could play would be 14, I think. I'd have to do the math again, but I think 14 would be the most they could play, maybe 15. But yeah, it's been creeping up there. Like you said, they're getting paid basically. So
the problem is not everybody is.
No, not everybody, but some of them.
Right. So and I guess the NIL contract could happen at any time. It's like, hey, you're doing pretty well, but now it's going to end, and whatever. Like, okay, hold on, you didn't get paid before, but you're having a great season, so now we're going to give you NIL money.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of the NIL, but one thing what NIL might do is keep some of these top players playing throughout the playoff or in the bowl games where they've taken themselves out so many times to protect themselves for the draft and whatnot, and they don't play. Well, if I'm paying you a bunch of money, I want to see you on the field. You're not going to sit out a bowl game to protect your draft status when I paid you, $1 million this year.
Right. So, Yes, I appreciate that thought
I think.
process. It's like,
I
hey,
think.
that now you're going to make them play some. So, I mean, you think of, I think of Ben Simmons, and just like, hey, I brought my team to the tournament, but I'm not going to play in the tournament because I don't want to show people exactly what I can do in the tournament, which would be nothing.
That should have been enough right there for any NBA team, including yours, unfortunately. Don't touch this guy.
Right.
If you don't want to play, I don't want you on my team. I want guys who want to play all the time.
That's exactly correct. And I want guys that want to be here.
You got a pickup game out on the pavement, I'm in.
Right.
That's the guys I want.
And so, well, listen, guys, I know that normally this is a 2-hour show, but we were filling in, and we could only really do an hour today, so we're going to
We
call
packed
it.
2 hours of information into this hour, though.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. It makes me miss our show. It's like we were able to get things moving and shuck it pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll
it
figure
was
out
good to
a way
hang
to
with you and talk some sports for a little bit. And
we'll
I've
figure
been
out a
missing
way
you
to
on
do
Sunday
something.
mornings.
We'll figure out a way to do
Absolutely.
something down the road.
Yeah, maybe if I could start learning more about college sports, but I'm not going to do that.
You're too
I
busy
ain't
with
got
what
the
you're
time.
doing, man.
Exactly. It's just all the time. I spend too much time at Flyers games to be able to pay attention to college. Uh, you want to talk about depressing, but anyways, so we appreciate everybody that was hanging with us today. Thank you very much. And Mac and Jack should both be back tomorrow, so you can look for them. And actually, you're on tomorrow, right? Along with
I
Byron
will be
Williams.
on at 9 o'clock in the 9 o'clock hour. I'll be on. Yes.
All right, and I will not be on tomorrow because I will be. Well, no, what I will be on tomorrow because I won't be going to Chicago until later in the afternoon. So
Good.
that works out, and then I'll be on. I will be at Chicago, freezing.
It's gonna
So
be. Is it going to be? Well, they've got some weather coming through Chicago probably right now. That's coming east here, I think, don't they?
right, I have a little bit of snow here right now, so
Yeah, we're going to get
it's
some
that
tonight.
type of thing. But
Somewhere between,
so
our weather forecasters are great. We're getting somewhere between 2 inches and 2 feet. So
gotcha.
plan
Well,
accordingly.
does lake effect hit you?
Not here where I am. Where I used to live near a lake, and it was big time snow. We'd get snow like every day. But here we're kind of in a valley here near in the capital area near Albany, and our snows really gets probably less than what they get around us. Not to say we don't get a big storm now and again, but as a rule, we miss the really nasty stuff.
That's good. That's the better thing about being in the mountains. It actually pushes weather in a couple of different directions. So
Yeah.
it's I get lucky here a little bit too, and I think I call it because of all of the factories that are like south of me. I feel like the factories actually help push the weather in different directions, and sometimes gives me a little bit of a pass. Not all the time, but some of the time.
I gotcha.
Again, that's just me playing scientist and not knowing what I'm talking
Hey,
about. So
listen, you just got to sell it. You don't need to know what you're talking about. You just need to sound like you know what you're talking about.
there you go. So everybody, thank you very much for hanging with us, and we'll be back tomorrow with Mac and Jack back as they are. Obviously, we were the subs today, but we definitely look a little bit better than those two. So, all right, guys, but have a good one, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much, and take care.